Greg, how important is hosting this meeting for Putin?
This is definitely an important moment for Putin. For one, it lets him demonstrate that he's still able to be a player on the international stage. Amid international sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies, they've largely sought to punish Putin and isolate him over his war in Ukraine. But he's here saying that, look, he's still around, he's a player and able to convene a lot of countries. In another way, it also lets him demonstrate that his message of reshaping the U.S.-led global order does have appeal for other countries outside of Russia. Finally, I would note that this is a chance for Putin to have meetings with key partners that are sometimes hard to pull off because of his travel limitations, given the arrest warrant from the ICC against him.
Okay, so there's a very practical reason for hosting this meeting as well. So who's on the guest list then, Greg?
Well, what's interesting here is that this is the largest gathering of leaders in Russia since the start of the invasion of Ukraine. There's 32 world leaders and other leaders such as the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. There are leaders from China. Xi Jinping will be there. India's Narendra Modi. Also non-BRICS country leaders like Turkey's President Erdogan. Turkey is anxious to join the BRICS group, and Erdogan will be present there as well. One notable absent will be Brazil's President Lula. He sustained a head injury at home and had to cancel at the last minute before coming.
Okay, to what extent, Greg, is this going to be a talking shop? To what extent is this just an attempt by Putin, again, to kind of bolster his international standing? Is there anything that's really going to be hammered out at this meeting? And to what extent is there unanimity, or at least agreement, on some of these key issues for the BRICS nations?
Well, that's a key point that you bring up. In a lot of ways, this is a talking group for these countries to come together, but they do have diverse interests and diverse motivations. There are significant issues on the agenda, but it's not clear that they'll get unanimity. One of those is how to replace the U.S. dollar. Russia obviously is heavily sanctioned and is seeking to de-dollarize trade, is pushing to reduce the U.S. dollar in global currency reserves, but not all countries are on board with that. Some are skeptical of replacing the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, even as they promote using national currencies in bilateral trade. Another issue is, of course, the expansion of BRICS. It expanded last year to 6 countries, but there's not agreement on whether it should be expanded moving forward, with some countries really in opposition to further expansion. So that could be one issue where you do see progress, or you do see some consensus built, but issues of de-dollarization, alternative currencies, those seem a lot further off.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I know China seems to have a slightly different approach to that versus what Putin and Moscow are hoping to achieve in terms of de-dollarization. It's interesting that former President Trump, has made some comments on this recently as well. Greg, to what extent is the Russia-China relationship becoming further enmeshed, or are those important divisions actually beneath the surface when it comes to that relationship between Beijing and Moscow?
Beijing has long sought to prop up Russia diplomatically and economically. And in fact, since the start of the invasion of the war in Ukraine, China has become Russia's most important partner. And this is another chance for Putin to meet with Xi Jinping in another setting and keep solidifying and entrenching that relationship. It's an important relationship. Trade has really grown between the two countries, and Putin seeks to continue that. China has shown that it is willing to prop up Moscow, willing to support it diplomatically. Xi Jinping will be present at the meeting, and that one-on-one will be an important one for Putin. There's no doubt there. So again, that's another reason why this summit is very important for Putin, a chance to meet with those leaders, especially Xi Jinping, who will be there.